Okay, so let's take a closer look at the front squat. So real quick, a couple of reasons you might want to choose the front squat. Because the bar is loaded in the front of your body, it makes it a little easier for most people to sit down and get through a full range of motion in their squat. It's also pretty important if you ever want to do any of the Olympic lifts. So if you want to do a clean and jerk, you have to be able to catch the bar in a solid front rack. So getting really good at that position is a good place to start. When we look into the front squat, the biggest thing that people struggle with is the rack position. So we want to make sure when we step under the bar, we get that bar right up close against our body. So we're going to grab a grip just outside of our shoulder widths. We're going to step under, we're going to drive our elbows up and through, and when we walk out of that rack, you'll see that that bar is actually resting across his shoulders. It's not in his hands. If he wanted to, he could extend his arms straight out front and they would stay in the same position. He could squat down naturally in this pattern. Okay? From here, we'll let him re-rack the bar, get set up again. The bar is attached to our body, it's connected to us. All we're gonna do is we're gonna sit down straight in between our feet when we do this squat. Eyes are going to stay forward the whole time, chest is going to stay up. This should look like a very upright up and down squat. So we want to take a stance that's about shoulder width, toes can be pointed out a little bit. This is going to allow us to sit down right in between our feet and go through a normal range of motion. If we're too narrow, it might feel good at the top, but then we're going to run out of range. Our joints really don't have anywhere to go, they kind of jam up. If we go too wide, the same kind of thing happens more at our hips. It's a bit of a balance problem, and we're not going to be able to get all the way down and achieve that depth that we're using the front squat for anyways. A pretty common issue that you're going to see during this front squat is getting dumped forward or feel like you're getting thrown out of position. So somebody will come down, it'll look good, and then coming out of the bottom, everything will tip forward and we'll lose that bar. The first thing that we need to do to work on this is make sure our load is appropriate, we're not too heavy, and that we can actually control the descent all the way through, and we're not overly relying on a bounce out of the bottom. Once you get good at front squatting, you'll get a little bit, but as you're learning, make sure it's controlled all the way down. The second piece is using a pause squat if you're really still getting thrown out of place. So going down there, pausing, not losing your tension and driving up. Don't relax down there. Lastly, we want to make sure we're taking a big breath of air and inflating our belly and our chest. That whole body's got to be full of air. That's going to act as some internal stabilization to help us get through that sticking point in the squat. So the rack position can be a little bit uncomfortable. So one way we can circumvent that in the short term is to use weightlifting straps. From there, we're going to go through the squat in the exact same pattern. We're still going to worry about driving our elbows up and high. They're just a good tool to help us go through the motions until we gain the flexibility. Now, it is important that we do spend some time with maybe just an empty barbell, working to get that mobility because it takes time. A little bit of growing pains there, but you'll get used to it the more time you spend under the bar. For some people, you're going to need to spend some time stretching and working on your mobility before you achieve a really good front rack position. One of the common areas that people struggle with is lats and triceps through the pec, kind of that upper body front rack mobility position. So if we use a banded stretch, for example, we can do one that just targets our lats or one that just targets our triceps, but this one's going to target both. We're going to loop that band over behind our body, and now we can think about driving that elbow back as we pull that rib cage down. That's really going to loosen up that front rack position. Hang out in this for 60 seconds aside before you front squat. It'll make a little bit of a difference for you. The next one you can do is for the lower body. So sometimes lower body mechanics make that front rack feel worse in the hole because our hips or our ankles just don't have range. So if we use a very specific stretch to the squat, we sit down in the bottom of this, we can really push ourselves, move back and forth into those tight areas and get comfortable in the hole of the squat. The more time we spend in the bottom here, the more comfortable it's going to be.